The Kenneth L. Johnson Show, broadcasting on WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5 FM and streaming worldwide. Broadcasting also here on LinkedIn. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of East Coast Executives, a retained search firm connecting exceptional talent with forward-thinking companies that understand talent as a business strategy. Wow, I'm excited to be here. WPPM, we do so many things. October 25th, the People Power Media Fest is taking place here at Philly Camp, 699 Ronstadt Street. You don't know where that's at, just second and Chestnut, in between Chestnut and Walnut, here in the beautiful city of Philadelphia. It's about free speech, real talk, and people. So with that being said, please check us out by going to ppmfest.org. Once again, www.ppmfest.org. All right, let's get to it on the Kenneth L. Johnson Show. We sit at the intersection of career, culture, and community. And every conversation is designed to help you see opportunity through a wider lens. It's the work we do here. Before we bring today's guest on, I want to pause and reflect on something that's been on my mind since being at the Excel Summit this past week. The Excel Summit was amazing. It wasn't just another event. It was a reminder of what happens when leaders show up in person, when we step into spaces built for growth, connection, and shared vision. In those moments, the quick hallway conversations, the sidebars after a panel, that's kind of where the real business happens. That's where careers are advanced, partnerships are built, and communities are strengthened. And honestly, that's the heartbeat of East Coast Executives. We build a business around connection, around understanding that the right conversation in the right room can change everything. For me, that's what made the Excel Summit so powerful, especially in the season where our business hasn't been without its challenges. At East Coast Executives, we have challenges just like any other business. Yeah, we paint the picture because we're always moving forward, but I would be remiss if I didn't sit here and say that this DEI backlash is real. The employment market has definitely shifted, and conversations around equity and representation are evolving, sometimes in uncomfortable ways. But here's what I've learned. These challenges aren't unique. They're really not unique at all, and they don't define us. My mindset right now is grounded in this truth. We are enough. So as a recruiter, a connector, a business owner, I'm reminded that our greatest strength is connectivity. And that's why I wanted to have today's conversation, because transparency, especially when we're talking about pay, is really about connection. It's about aligning career goals, strengthening culture, and building community inside organizations that want to do better. The same pillars that drive everything we do here at East Coast Executives. Now, here's what's interesting. My guest today is someone who lives in that world every day. Lulu Seikaly, senior corporate attorney at Payscale, has spent more than a decade helping leaders and organizations get paid right, not by guessing, but by grounding compensation in truth, data, and compliance. Today, we're diving into how AI pay transparency and employment expectations are reshaping the salary conversation. So let me bring Lulu Seikaly on to the Kenneth L. Johnson Show. 1 second here. Let's see. There we go. Add to stage. And we have the amazing Lulu Seikaly. Hey, what's going on?
Hi, Kenneth. How are you? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I apologize for the technical difficulty we were having earlier, but we got it together. You are here. We started on time. Amazing. Really excited to have you on. This show has become kind of the heartbeat of my week, right? It allows me to kind of keep pushing through because I really believe we're doing amazing work just through the platform. And to have you on is really a positive in that direction. So I thank you so very much for coming on. If you don't mind, please tell my audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Lulu Seikaly. Kenneth pronounced my last name perfectly, like he does every time we chat.
Well, hold on. I'm a basketball fan.
I know why. I know why you did. I know why you did.
So I always get it right. Plus, I consider you a friend. So for me to mispronounce your name would be crazy.
That's true. That is very true. We go back a few years now, but I'm based in Dallas, Texas. So may sneak in some y'alls in this conversation for your Northeastern listeners, your Philly listeners. But I have been an employment lawyer for over a decade now, been with Payscale for almost 4 years. Their in-house employment counsel. So I, advise our people teams on sort of internal employment issues. But I also have this very unique opportunity at Payscale to be a thought leader in this space of pay transparency and pay equity, because we help our customers who come to us, because we're a software platform, we're a compensation platform, but help our customers kind of understand, are there legal requirements to be transparent about your pay practices? Even if there aren't legal requirements to be transparent about your pay practices, maybe it's a great idea to do so just because of how the ideas have shifted, how the younger generations are now entering the workforce and demanding things like pay transparency. So I kind of help our customers and speak on lots of platforms about this issue. So it's very near and dear to my heart, because at the end of the day, if organizations are more transparent about pay, if employees can have really good conversations about their pay and understand why they're being paid the way they're being paid, then maybe we'll close this pay gap one day. So that's really, really important to me. And I hope to see that in my lifetime.
Well, yeah, I hope to see it in your lifetime as well, Lulu. Listen, I want to jump right into this conversation. I've been looking forward to this one. So Lulu, you guys shared, you and your team, I think it was Jessica we were working with over there. Shout out to Jessica McBride for doing an amazing job. But you guys shared that AI tools and social media platforms increasingly shape how employees research salaries. And there's some risk. What risk do you see emerging from that shift?
Yeah, so Payscale, we do a ton of research every year. We come out with white papers, multiple white papers a year. So the most recent one we just released is called the Pay Confidence Gap Report. And in that most recent report, we are seeing that AI and social media, I would say AI assistants like ChatGPT and social media are actually driving up salary expectations. So when you have candidates researching what they think they should be worth, they're going to these platforms, which are usually not routed in reliable data. And that's actually inflating those salaries. The problem with that is when you have candidates who are applying to roles that don't have salary bands listed on them, they're going in asking for the sun, the moon, and the stars. And the organization is most likely taken aback because they're saying, we aren't budgeting for an entry-level engineer to pay them $350,000 a year. But the candidate at the same time is saying, well, I did my research, and that research is ChatGPT, that research is TikTok, that research is Instagram, and wherever they're getting that information, they think that their entry-level value is $350,000. So that report actually found, it's just astronomical numbers, I thought, when I saw it, was that 1 in 5 employees are sourcing the salary information from places like ChatGPT, and then another 1 in 5 employees are sourcing it from social media. So that becomes a problem with the expectations between the organization and, of course, the candidates who are applying to these roles.
I can imagine that becomes a problem. Listen, the Payscale, what is it? The Pay Confidence Gap Report shows that 1 in 5 employees use AI assistants like ChatGPT for salary information. All right, so this is raising salary expectations, as you had mentioned. How should employers prepare for this new reality?
Well, I will be a broken record on this. But if employers are more transparent about their pay practices, that's how they can combat it. And I'm not saying that employers have to share salaries for everybody within their organization. Like Kenneth, if you and I were working together, I don't need to know what you're making. You don't need to know what I'm making. But what organizations really have to do is they have to post those ranges on the jobs they're recruiting for. So that way, any candidate who applies understands that this is the range that this organization is willing to pay at. Maybe they're willing to go slightly above the range, but being kind of open about those practices. And then even with their incumbent employees, like those who are currently within the organization, the transparency there is, I'm a senior corporate attorney at Payscale. There are 3 other senior corporate attorneys at Payscale. We all have different subject matter expertise, but we all have the same salary range. So every year, around March, during like the end of year performance evaluation, I get a letter from my boss that says, this is the range of the senior corporate attorneys at Payscale. This is where you fall within that range. And then I understand, why I'm in the range. Is it because of my seniority at Payscale? Is it because of my my expertise? Is it because of how long I've been practicing law? Like, I understand kind of those objective factors that place me on this grid that go, the sliding scale of the pay scale. So that's how employers can really combat this, because from our customers, we also hear from our customers that this is becoming frustrating for them too. But then we say in return to them, what kind of information are you providing to those candidates? Because you can stop it kind of at the door before it even becomes an issue.
Wow. It's intertwined in so many different platforms and just so many foundational pieces, because people really believe this information, right? So why is reliable, transparent data so critical in today's compensation conversation?
When you're looking at data, especially for organizations, data can be really helpful in terms of having organizations understand what is market for a role that they're posting for example. So, we can provide them reliable data that says, if you're hiring an engineer in Philadelphia, this is the going rate for an engineer with 3 to 5 years of experience. But if you're recruiting, let's say, for an engineer in San Francisco with that same 3 to 5 years of experience, more likely that's going to be a much higher salary range than what you're looking for in Philadelphia. But if you're looking for an engineer in Topeka, Kansas, with that same 3 to 5 years of experience, that range is most likely going to be lower than Philadelphia, and it's going to be definitely way lower than San Francisco. So having that reliable data will really help organizations understand what is market, how they can attract the best talent into their organizations without lowballing candidates, without paying too much for candidates. But then at the same time, it really saves time for recruiters, because if you are posting your ranges for your candidates to see, you're automatically weeding out people who aren't going to be willing to take that range, or who think that they're maybe underqualified for that range. So it really helps your TA folks also at the same time. So they're not sourcing thousands of resumes. Maybe they're sourcing hundreds of resumes instead.
I got you. You know what? I didn't even think about that side of it. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, so we're really kind of talking about best practices. So what are some of the best practices HR leaders and recruiters can use to navigate pay transparency laws while keeping their organizations compliant and competitive as well? Because, I get this information from you. I think one of our initial conversations was about some of the pay transparency laws coming into play a few years back. So you are my go-to on this conversation. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, luckily the train has not stopped. It's slowed down just a tad, but it hasn't stopped. So we've got about a dozen states right now that have pay transparency laws on the books. So what that means is, if you are recruiting in one of these states, if you are hiring remote workers and you have a presence in one of these states, that you are required to post, as an organization, you're required to post salary ranges in your job posting. So just a couple states to mention, ton of the states in the Northeast right now. So Massachusetts is coming up in the next week or so. We have Jersey, we have New York, we have Vermont, we have Maryland, we have Washington, D.C., we have California, and we've got a ton of states, Washington, Colorado, tons of states. So if you're an organization that's going to be required to post your ranges because the law tells you to, the first thing you have to do is get your house in order. And what that means is building job architecture, budgeting, figuring out like what is a role worth in your organization and can you afford to pay within a certain range. And then my number one tip for all organizations is befriend your employment counsel. Please, please, please let them be your best friend, because your employment counsel or employment attorney, whether they work for your organization or work for a law firm you contract with, they're going to be able to help you navigate a lot of these laws, and especially help you navigate them in terms of your compensation philosophy in-house with your organization as well. So, we have tons of customers who are multi-state. So most of our customers now are saying, you know what, we don't have to post ranges everywhere that we hire, but we're going to do it anyways, because we know it's good for business. We know we're going to attract the best talent. We know we're going to keep the best folks. So we're just going to do it everywhere. So I think that's kind of the wave that we're seeing now.
It's the Kenneth L. Johnson Show, live on WPPM 106.5 FM Philly, streaming worldwide and broadcasting today on LinkedIn. We are here with Lulu Seikaly, really giving us great information. Lulu is the authority on this topic, and we appreciate her being with us here today. Lulu, what I was hearing you say about companies, how they build internally, kind of drew me to another question here. So how can companies rebuild employee trust around compensation, right? Especially when there's so much misinformation out there, possibly unrealistic expectations to start. And this kind of spreads internally. So I'm not even talking about the external candidates that I work with, that I'm trying to get into organizations like Payscale and other big organizations. I'm talking about even the people inside the organization that may have misinformation. And then they want to have these conversations during performance reviews and things of that nature. How do companies deal with that authentically?
The best way they can deal with that is showing their cards. I think that's like truly the simplest way of putting it. And what I mean by that is having really thoughtful conversations with your employees about how we got to your pay, how we got to your pay range, why you're falling within the range that you're falling within, and really getting the employee to understand why they're being paid the way that they're being paid. We did a report 3 years ago. I've been citing this report recently a lot, but it's such a good report. It's called our retention report. We did it 3 years ago because it was a behemoth of a report. But in that report, we did find at Payscale that if an employee understands why they're being paid the way they're being paid, even if they think they're being paid below market, they are more likely to trust that organization and they're more likely to stay. So that is super important because, I mean, a lot of organizations, especially small ones, say like, we can't compete with the Silicon Valley titans to pay you, upwards of 6 figures a year of this, entry-level role, but we can value you in other ways, and we can tell you why you're being paid the way that you're being paid, and we're going to walk you through what your career progression looks like and be transparent about that as well.
I guess that does come into play. I didn't think about this even in preparing for this show, and that was probably a miss. But now with people working remotely, they may not actually be sitting where HQ is. Mm-hmm. Does that impact some of those conversations?
100%.
Okay.
100%. And here's the kicker, though, is that organizations have to decide how they're going to handle those conversations before they come up. Example, let's say you were based in San Francisco, you're a tech company based in San Francisco. All your employees are getting paid San Francisco salaries. COVID happened. You guys remember COVID? Yeah, we remember COVID. COVID happened. That San Francisco company said, okay, everyone go home. We're all working from home. This is a real life example, by the way. Yes. This is a true example. A lot of people then moved outside of the city of San Francisco. They moved to places like Sacramento, much cheaper cost of living. Sure. They moved to the Valley of California, much cheaper cost of living, but they kept their San Francisco salaries. Company now says 3 years later, everyone back to the office. And people are like, I bought a house. I'm not moving. So they're saying, fine, you can work remotely, but we're decreasing your salary now. Wow. Because now your cost of living is much lower living in a place like Sacramento than San Francisco. Well, you can do that, but figure out that policy beforehand. If you're going to have geographic-based salaries, be upfront about that to begin with. So what we tell our customers, especially those who are still fully remote, like Payscale, we're still fully remote. We don't do this, but we have seen customers do this where they say, like, we're not geographic agnostic. We will pay based on where you're located. So region A, New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, this is the range for the role. Region B, Philadelphia, Houston, Denver, whatever, this is the range for the role, maybe slightly lower than region A, region C, region D, etc. So as an organization, when we talk about compensation philosophy, that's one of the things you have to think about, especially if you're a remote organization, is are you going to be geographically agnostic, or are you going to pay based on where somebody lives?
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of restructuring would need to take place to or I guess really you just set a policy. I don't know. It's probably much more.
A policy.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, okay, okay. I
Yeah,
understand
set
that.
that policy. But I mean, we've seen situations where an organization will say, well, so and so just moved to like the middle of nowhere, Idaho, and now we want to pull back his salary because now he lives in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. And my first question is, do you have a policy for that?
Mhm.
And they're like, well, no, we don't. And I said, okay, well, if you're going to write a policy, write it now. He can be the first person that you
Yeah.
apply that to, but it's got to be a moving forward thing. Like if you've got people in the middle of the country too, like, are you going to decrease their salaries too? Like, is it legal? Probably. Is it the right thing to do? It's up to your organization and your philosophy there.
And with this new world of work and the future of work, like it's going to come up again. So it's probably best to address it as early as possible, right? So,
100%.
all right. So Lulu, looking ahead, right? What trends in pay equity and transparency legislation should organizations and job seekers be paying attention to in 2026 and beyond? I know this is your sweet spot. I see you on LinkedIn raising the flag for these conversations. I see you participating in these conversations. We have the subject matter expert on the Kenneth L. Johnson Show today. Please talk to us about what trends we should be paying attention to.
I think we're still going to see the trends of state by state passing of pay transparency legislation. I think we are another administration away from seeing a pay transparency law on the federal level or the national level. But I still think states are going to be very eager to pass their own state level pay transparency laws. The other thing I think is going to happen is I think we're going to start seeing more of pay reporting, pay gap reporting. This is something very common in Canada and Europe right now. Has nothing to do with employees, but it has everything to do with employers, where employers are going to have to start reporting to their individual state organizations if there's any pay gaps in, between men and women in certain similar job types. It's going to be a lot more work for compensation teams, especially if you don't have your house in order. Again, like if you don't have your job architecture set up, if you don't have your ranges in place, if you don't have your levels in place, if that's something that y'all end up doing in your organization, it's going to be a lot heavier lift. But I think it's also going to put the spotlight more on organizations and make organizations much more aware of any pay gaps that they have and require them to find ways to close them if they can't close them immediately.
Sounds complex, but
Very.
it's the work that needs to be done, though, right, Lulu?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's the work that needs to be done. And every year, what we tell our customers is like, if you've got a pay gap existing right now, it's just going to get wider. Every year you provide merit increases to the other folks around that individual who is being paid significantly lower. And it's going to be a much more expensive and a much bigger problem the longer you wait. So uncovering kind of those pay gaps now, the earlier the better, is going to be your best bet.
Here at the Kenneth L. Johnson Show, we sit right in the middle of career, culture, and community. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question. You have a way of just establishing incredible dialogue around this topic. And I just appreciate how you take a very complex topic and make it clear, practical, and human. I think that's why I love being associated with you and connecting with you, because you make it easy for me to understand something that's very complex. With that being said, I have a question for you, and it's a two-part question. How did you get involved in this work? And also, just to close out, how can my listeners here in Philly on 106.5, everybody streaming worldwide, and even the people on LinkedIn, stay connected to you and your work? So,
Absolutely. Well, when I started at Payscale almost 4 years ago, to be quite honest, I was a litigator, which means that I was in court a lot. I was representing employers in court. I was doing the employment stuff. And there are wonderful thought leaders at Payscale, one who's still there, Ruth Thomas. She taught me almost everything I know about pay transparency and pay equity, and the way she explained it to me and kind of got me up to speed on it. And once I really learned about it and really dove into it and started tracking kind of all the legislation, I really fell in love with it, because to me, pay equity is such a big, pay equity has always been a topic for me, like on the political side, that was always very important, but to see it from a different lens made it even more interesting for me. And the fact that I can speak on it and help people who listen or our customers on it, it's been really, really, really rewarding. And And the best way to stay connected to me is find me on LinkedIn. I'm all, like Kenneth said, I'm always there posting updates about legislation, whether it's in the US or Canada, or now Europe is kind of the big topic now. I love emojis. I always post pictures of my dog Basil, who sits on that chair a lot of the time over there. He's much
I was going to ask how Basil was doing. Okay.
He's great. I think he's outside my door. I had to close my door because he comes in and then he'll like nudge my elbow and then he'll decide he's over it and then he'll leave. So I kicked him out for this. But
I know that Menda Harts has a dog. I'm not sure if her dog made an appearance on the show, but Basil could have been the first non-human to make an appearance on the show. That would have been special.
Next time. Okay. I'm sure I'll leave the door open next time and let him come wander in.
That works.
And the best way to stay connected to me is feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Add me as a connection or send me a message. I'm always there. I'm very responsive. Would love to stay in touch with your listeners.
Well, listen, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you and everything that you do and all the support you've given me over the years and the work that we do in trying to amplify the voices of people that are really doing the work out here, like yourself, and also sharing some of those messages with our audience. So thank you so very much for joining the show. Lulu Seikaly, I want to close this conversation out today by just talking about the importance of this work here. It's really interesting to me that I get the opportunity to sit here and speak to people like Lulu. You know, today's show kind of brought us back to what matters most: career, culture, and community, right? Because when we talk about pay transparency, we're not just talking about compensation. We're talking about how people feel valued at work, how culture is shaped, and how trust is built. AI may accelerate access to data, but it's our human judgment that determines how that data becomes equity, opportunity, and impact. And I believe Lulu represents us well in that fashion. You know, to all the HR leaders, recruiters, executives that are tuning in, especially those I connected with at the Excel Summit. I told you we were doing this on Monday, so I know you checked in. This is your time to lead with courage and clarity. Use data as a bridge, not a barrier. Build pay systems that reflect the culture you want to create. You know, the summit reminded me why I love this work. I had the privilege of sharing the stage with Tristan Layfield, Nathan Adams, Orlando Haynes for a real conversation on compensation. Not just about numbers, but about knowing your worth. I reconnected with some brilliant minds and friends like Adrian Porter, Stephen A. Hart, Brandon Frame, Sean Holcomb Jones, just met him from USTA, he's amazing. And of course, the Hope Dealer himself, Frank Brady. Each of them a force in their own lane and each committed to elevating others. And of course, a special shout out to Alfred Edmond Jr. for curating a space that continues to inspire growth, collaboration, and forward motion through the people and his role at Black Enterprise. That's what this show stands for. At East Coast Executives, we're building partnerships grounded in the same spirit, helping organizations attract, hire, and retain the kind of talent that reflects the communities they serve. Because when career, culture, and community align, business moves differently. I want to thank my guest, Lulu Seikaly of Payscale, for bringing her expertise and insight to the mic today. If you missed any part of this broadcast, you can replay the show on LinkedIn or YouTube. We will have it up probably later today. Or anywhere else, right, that we post the reels and post shows. And remember, please, the Kenneth L. Johnson Show is more than a conversation. It's a platform built by East Coast executives, where career, culture, and community connect to drive businesses forward. I'm Kenneth L. Johnson reminding you, we are enough, and when we connect, we grow. Until next time, stay curious, stay confident, stay connected, and stay networking. Shout out to Lulu Seikaly and Payscale for making this show great. Thank you so very much for joining us.